across educational levels in this country. Some of the issues that were raised, or if you like, highlighted, were those that hit at the very core of the teaching profession in Nigeria. We talked about the evolution of teaching in this country, teacher education, welfare for teachers, how education has evolved, the challenges in the sector, and the very disturbing concern of funding for education in Nigeria, which many stakeholders say is largely below 10%, which is a far cry from the 26% recommended by UNESCO. I'm joined this morning by someone who has a handle on these issues, beyond which is very, very passionate about teacher education in this country and wants to see education do well across board. Dr. Smart Ologbekon is the president, Colleges of Education Academic Staff Union. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Doc, for making our time this Monday morning to join us on the program. So your union had a program this last weekend, Friday precisely, which is just a day before the commemoration of World Teachers Day. And your theme was valuing teachers' voices towards repositioning teacher education in Nigeria. When I talk to people like yourself who are vast in the field of education, they say we were not always like this. They talk about the 60s, talk about the 70s, some say even up to early 90s or mid 90s. Do we also blame this on the military?
Good morning. I want to respond to this by saying that the situation of teaching in our country started degenerating after the incursion of the military into the governance of Nigeria, because they did not actually put so much value on education, because even most of them that were actually leading us at that time did not even have the requisite education, that will make them to have put the right value on education. And you really recollect that it was even during the military that teachers were owed salary for months, even years. And it was even during the military that landlords refused to give their houses to teachers because they knew that the teachers would not have the capacity to pay. But prior to that time, to the time military incursion came, that is pre-1966, teachers were highly valued. In fact, as at that time, people deliberately wanted to be teachers. And those who were teachers at that time were people that were highly regarded in the society. But after that, the money politics came in, and we have a complete erosion of the value of teachers, even of education. And that was, even at that time, almost everybody wanted to go into the military, because they saw that as the best way to make money and the best way to be recognized. And since that time, we started having this devaluation, and it has not stopped since then.
Quite interesting. Teachers, I mean, especially those who have come this far in your field, always talk about the need for the voices of teachers to be heard. What are the factors drowning the voices of teachers in this country?
When we talk about teachers, kudos to UNESCO for coming up with this team, valuing teachers' voices, is because they actually understand the fact that teachers' voices have been very low. Very low because not many people actually understand the impact of teachers. Most times you hear people talk about building a nation and that you need education to build nations. But you discover that the attitude, even of those people who make those statements, they are antithetical, to those statements, because they do not actually reflect giving the teachers the voices they need. So when we are talking about valuing their voices, is for you to be able to listen to what teachers are talking about training, what they are talking about access, and what they are talking about their welfare. Therefore, if you do not actually take cognizance and give the adequate attention to voices of teachers in the area of training, in the area of access to education, in the area of the condition, the welfare of teachers, then definitely we are going to have a very serious problem in our hands, which is the present situation. And teachers continue to talk. And the pathetic situation is that the voices of teachers have been drowned. They have gone down because they do not even have the capacity to cry anymore, to even talk anymore, because no one listens to teachers. And that is the situation.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about training because the issue of teacher education is very paramount. Are teachers better trained today? Because teachers always talk about training and retraining. Can we say they are building capacity better today?
Well, it is when we want to look at your training now and training then, it will have to be actually look at from different perspectives. When we are talking about the content, we are talking about the globalization of the content and the richness of the content. Yes, we will say that teachers today, they are better trained because now we talk about the global village, we talk about ICT, we talk about all those things that have been infused into the curriculum that were not there in the past. But when we talk about the quality of the teaching that teachers received in those days and what they receive now, the fact remains that in those days they were better quality. Better quality because government placed a high premium on teaching and on the facilities. And that was why when you were in the universities or when you were in the colleges of education in those days, you had access to almost everything you needed for you to get the best training you wanted. But those things are no longer available today. For instance, if you are talking about better training for teachers today, you get to a typical university or you get to a typical college of education and you see more than 500 students crammed into a classroom and they are being taught by a teacher. But in those days, it is not like that. You see, the student-teacher ratio, was adequate, and teachers and students were able to get themselves synchronized, integrated, that they received better training at that time. Because one, the teachers then were better paid, and the teachers then were more respected. Therefore, their students also respect them. And this, when you put together, we could say that they had a better, more quality training in those days than what we have at present.
Because I'm asking you that question, knowing that as a young boy growing up, I had people around me, some of them, my aunties, who had just TC2. They were respected until, of course, they had to further education. And they became accomplished in the field of training, of teaching ultimately. There's now the emphasis on the dual mandates. Talk to Nigerians about what's really it is about.
Well, the dual mandate is the new face of college education in Nigeria. Is the game changer for college education. Since 1981, colleges of education have been running degree in affiliation with universities. Despite the fact that the first college of education was established around 1964, because from Advanced Teachers College to college of education, and they ran the NCE, Nigeria Certificate in Education, from 1964 to 1981 alone. But in 1981, colleges started running degree in affiliation with universities, and that they have been running since 1981. And at that time, when they were running this degree, they ran it just for 2 years. That is, if you had passed through college education for 3 years, you would just go into the University of Affiliation for 2 years and you get your degree. After some time, that was changed. It was changed to 3 years. And we discover that when we talk about colleges of education, they have peculiar programs that are not even present in the university. Therefore, if you are in affiliation with the university, you discover that even some of the courses you run in your college, they are not available in the University of Affiliation. So the implication is that the students who run those courses will not be able to go further, for them to be able to get the degree or further their studies. So the implication of that is that they will either stop at the level of NCE or they will have to change course entirely. And we also discover that for the colleges that are running degree in affiliation, the universities, the National University Commission that actually carry out assessment of this university in what we call accreditation, had actually accredited them to have been qualified to run this degree in affiliation without any type of support from the parent university or for the university of affiliation. And the implication of that is that those colleges, they have the requisite facilities, personnel for them to be able to run degree. And therefore, instead of looking for a universities of affiliation, what the federal government did was to give assent to the bill that made College of Education to run concurrently NCE and degree program. And that is what it is called dual mandate. That is, they have the mandate to run NCE and they also have the mandate to run degree. So that becomes a dual mandate. So the implication of that again is that if you come in for NCE, you will have to be trained for 5 years to get your degree. So at the end of 3 years, you get your NC certificate. After that, you proceed. It's a transition to degree in that same college.
And it is seamless.
It's seamless. Then you get your degree. And where we are going with that is that you become double qualified. You are qualified as an NC teacher. You are qualified as a degree teacher. And that means the mandate for NC is for you to be able to teach at the basic level of education.
Which is elementary.
For the degree is for you to be able to teach at the senior secondary school level. Therefore, if you are graduating at that level, you are double qualified to teach at the basic level of education. You are qualified to teach at the senior secondary school level of education. And we are looking at that because when we're talking about professionalization, any profession to be called, any discipline to be called a profession, they must meet certain criteria.
Right.
And one of those criteria is the number of years in training. And globally, 5 is the minimum for anything to be called a profession. And that is why you discover that law, engineering, medicine, all of them run for more than from 5 years and above.
Right.
And that is what makes it to be called a profession. And it is not just that. The internship, the training also involve the hands-on, whereby you go into practical session for you to be able to have a kind of engagement with the people that you actually want to engage in that practice. And that is what is called teaching practice. So we have done teaching practice in global education, not just to be what we have at a very level, but at a deep level, whereby you have to be involved in teaching practice for more than 8 months. Whereby you will be in a particular primary school, secondary school, for you to be able to get yourself, to practice at that level.
Right.
And that, to us, is a game changer that will make colleges of education to be able to actually perform or fulfill the mandate for which it is established, or they were established.
All right. Hopefully, I'm not putting you in the spotlight here, right? Just recently, Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman, someone who himself has been teaching for decades, has been a regulator as well. I mean, he has gotten to what some persons might call the zenith or pinnacle in this very critical sector. Told Nigerians that going forward, any child who is not up to 18 or older is not eligible to write WAEC. Some persons, parents in particular, and guardians said, no, what if my child is exceptionally intelligent and that child is 15 or 16? Can they not write WAEC? Is this a pronouncement, a mere pronouncement, or a policy position as far as education is concerned? I mean, from where you stand?
I think the position of the minister is not wrong. But the minister did not, go further to explain whether this is a new policy or is a policy that has been there. The fact remains that the position of the minister is the policy. But this policy has been jettisoned over the years. We have national policy on education, and we have the process that leads to individual to get to do certain things. But over the years, we have distorted this process. The process is no longer in accordance with the policy. So it is what the minister did was just to reaffirm the policy. But he didn't explain that this is not a new policy. It has always been that for you to start primary school, you have to be 6 years old. And for you to complete it, you have to be 12 years old. And by the time you spend another 6 years, then you have to be 18. That is the policy, as it has been. So the minister is not saying a new thing. But I think maybe he could have gone further to explain. But over the years, if what I expected the minister to have done at that time was that, despite the fact that that is a policy, and the minister is quite aware that that has been distorted over the years. So what I expect the minister to have said is that let us start the implementation of this policy from the beginning, from the start. Therefore, what do I mean? A child cannot start primary school until 6. And you cannot enter secondary school until you are 12. And you cannot, because the statement of the minister is like an ambush. Because some students had already got to that level to write WAEC or to enter into university, and you say, no, you cannot proceed. It's an ambush for them. Because over the year, they had not stopped them while they were transiting. So you cannot just go to the goalpost and ambush them. And that is why I think the negative reaction from Nigeria came. And when we talk about brilliant students, I think people usually get this confused. And they don't really understand that. And that is why most of the problems we have is that most of our schools, even I mean proprietors of primary school, nursery school, they are not educationists. They are just businessmen and women who just had who have the money, establish primary school, establish secondary school, and in order for them to get more students, they introduce a lot of things that become anomalies. And those are the things that have distorted the situation, whereby you discover that students don't even pass through primary 4 or 5 anymore. From primary 3, some of them will write primary 4, they will go, claiming that those students are genius. That is not correct. When we talk about being a genius or being exceptionally brilliant, it's an abnormality. It is not in the field of education. Your child is when we talk about the brain, we call it tabula. It is empty. Whatever you input inside the brain of the child sticks. It's like a magnet. And that is why, even if you teach a child in primary school algebra, and he's well taught, he will understand it. Because the brain is empty. But it goes beyond that. It is not just about being brilliant. It is also about maturity and maturation. Those psychological factors, they are very, very important. And that is why before educationists arrive at 6 years, before you start, then they are put into consideration the psychological factors, the sociological factors that children must have actually, covered before they proceed, because it goes beyond the cognitive aspect. And the processing aspect is also more important. The maturity of the child is also more important. And when people start comparing that somebody graduated at the age of 17, somebody got a PhD at the age of 23, it is possible. But those children, they are not just the normal children. In the field of education, we classify them other abnormalities. They are brilliant, they are exceptional.
They're in their own class.
They are in the world of their own. And they don't even put them in the same class with their colleagues, with their people of the same age. They move them away and treat them because they also exhibit some traits that are not actually in conformity with convention because of the exceptional, intelligence they possess. You see a child that has up to IQ of about 180, which is exceptional. And such a child, you don't just jump them. So most of the children, we call them judge. They are not. They are just children that have been trained to attain certain, goal. Your child will get it because you have given them a lot of training. They will get it. That does not make that child an exceptional child. And before you have thrown him to the university and the scoping does not mean the sociological and the psychological aspect of it will not go. And that is why the same children, when you take them abroad, they return them to the class of their age. No matter the
having done assessments.
Yes. They will return them, no matter how brilliant the child, they will return the child to the class of his age. Because they believe that he has to move with that age for them. And if your child is claimed to have been exceptional, they will separate the child and give that child special training, special education. And the child will be monitored on that basis. How many of these institutions do that? So what we are saying is that when it comes to age, we should understand the principles behind it. It is not just about just age. It has psychological, reasons and sociological reasons that have been factored in before the age is actually, slated. But the minister, what I believe should have done is ask schools to respect the age from the beginning and not an ambush at the age of at this time, because some students had already crossed that level and you cannot stop them.
Interesting. Let's talk about the policy in general. As of today, are we doing better with our education policy from top to bottom?
We are not. In fact, we are not anywhere.
What's the broken link?
Yeah, because of misplaced priority. That is just it. The fact remains that we have a government that has not taken education so seriously. And we are paying heavily for that. We are paying heavily for that because look at the 2024 budget. You discover that about 13% is devoted to defense. And about 7% is devoted to education. And the reason is because the education we refuse to give to our children has led us to a state of insecurity that now make us to spend more on insecurity than on education. And you cannot have a country with about 18 million out of school children. Those are children. And out of these people, you discover that after 18, because if you are talking of out of school children, we are looking at those from age of 5 to 14 who are supposed to be in 12 who are supposed to be in primary school, and those from from 12 who are supposed to be in junior secondary school. But even what of those that are after that age that are more than 20 million? So if you are talking about 18 plus 20, you are talking about 38 million Nigerians that are not doing anything. And in such a situation, you cannot have such humongous number of people that are not doing anything productive, and you will not be experiencing kidnapping, you will not be experiencing terrorism, you will not be experiencing all those social maladies that we contend with. Therefore, the consequences of that is to devote our resources, our meager resources, to defense, because we are battling with serious insecurity because we have refused to do the right thing at that time. And as at now, we have not yet learned the lesson. And we still continue to make the same mistake because we are not doing anything serious about funding education. We are not funding education. The primary schools have collapsed completely. Only private schools are surviving. Nobody sends children to public primary school. Even the teachers that teach in those primary schools don't send their children there. So they will prefer to go to a private school, send their children there than sending their children even to the school where they teach. But that was not the situation in those days. While we were growing up, while we were in primary school, the children of our teachers, the children of our head teachers, we were in the same class. We were coming up to the same time. But today, it doesn't happen anymore. The head teacher, the classroom teacher, their children are in private school where they are there. Therefore, the commitment has gone down, the efforts, they are not actually leading to that. And that is because government has misplaced priority, and we are not getting what we are supposed to get as a people. And that is the serious problem we have today, misplaced priority.
All right, I think there are a few other problems we need to talk about in the course of the program this morning, everyone. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at funding. How much of gap do we have to fill in that regard? And then other issues, including the private school element in the mix. Do stay with us. Global Morning is your ultimate destination for engaging political and economic matters. I am Uyi Agmofwebe.
And don't forget to include social discussions. Tune in every weekdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am Queen Agaba.
For insightful breakfast ideas, business summaries, sports highlights, international and local news perspective, I am Anthony Momodu.
Don't miss the in-depth analysis of current and political issues by the Global Morning team and experts. I am Jumai Manson.
Catch Global Morning here on Global Television. Getting on the action. I am Edikan Michael.
We are
the Global Morning team.
Business Point on Global Television.
The business world can be dynamic and unpredictable, with headwinds and volatility sometimes becoming an obstacle for players in the business and economy landscape. Watch Business Point on Global Television as Samuel Oji walks you through the twists, turns and curves in bands, stocks and crucial market indices from a global standpoint. Watch Business Point weekdays on Global Television at 11 a.m. West African time. Business Point. This is business. All right, everyone. I've been talking with the president of the Colleges of Education Academic Staff Union, Dr. Smart Olugbeko, who has been providing us very vital insights into the state of education in this country across level. But let's talk about a few things quickly, Doc. Let's look at funding for education. You talked about 7%, for example, in the current fiscal year, the budget cycle we are currently running. UNESCO does not run Nigeria, so politicians have argued with me on live television that we should not be using UNESCO as a standard. I mean, as a career educator, how much of sense do you find in that argument?
Well, you understand that politicians, they only move to where their interest, lies. That is where they move, and anything that is not in consonance with their interest will definitely be criticized. UNESCO didn't impose 26% on any country. It is just a recommendation. And Nigeria is a signatory, to some of these agreements. And but when it comes to implementation, we remember that it is not compulsory for us to implement them. And if you are looking at that, you discover that even the National Assembly that will actually look at what is happening to education, you discover that their budget in the National Assembly is more than the budget of 15 biggest universities in Nigeria did university people. And we are talking about universities that are catering for over 300,000 students, and they are catering for over 34,000 lecturers and other administrative staff. And you see their budget below even what National Assembly give to themselves. And that is for you to understand the thinking of Nigerians, politicians, when it comes to funding of education, not just tertiary education, education in general has actually not been funded, and Nigeria will not get out of the problem we are if we are not going to take education seriously. We'll continue, to grope in the dark, and that is the problem we have. The solution to our problem is for government to prioritize education. That is all.
As it stands today, we're seeing proliferation of private schools from preschool all the way to university, for example. Some people have said that this is a deliberate attempt, particularly your colleagues. They say this is a deliberate attempt by government and some non-state actors to make education so private in such a way that the public education system, bottom to top, will die a natural death over time. Do you share that sentiment?
Yeah, I think that is a fact that the politicians, they are deliberately moving our education away from it becoming the responsibility of government. And the reason is because they believe that the more of these public institutions we have, the more they will have to invest public assets, in them, and this they don't want. And just as I earlier said, even when you look at the budgetary provisions for education, they do not prioritize it, because to them, they believe that private individuals should own this institution and they should become enterprises, whereby they become businesses for them to run. And most of the private institutions we have, they are owned by mostly politicians, because only politicians even have the money to be able to establish some of these universities, because it is not easy to run universities, if not because of the insistence of the Academic Staff Union, Coeasu, and ASOP, that we have insisted that TED fund should not actually be bastardized to the extent of being made to fund private universities or tertiary institutions. Politicians have on several occasions made attempts to amend TED fund law to the extent that it will also be able to cater, to fund private universities. But we have on several occasions where they threw this up, resisted it, that TED fund, even by the intent of its establishment, is actually intended, to augment government funding and make our public institutions to be able to function effectively. And you collect that third fund, even at its inception, was Education Trust Fund. It catered for primary, secondary, until the amendment came that made it to be tertiary. And now politicians are looking for a way of going further to do an amendment at ensuring that it also fund their own private universities. Because what they are trying to do is to make sure that the public institutions are not functioning, and only private enterprises, which they call private universities, will continue to survive in this country.
Interesting. Okay, so it comes down to regulation. Can you say, I mean, is the regulation today of education in this sector, whether by Federal Ministry of Education, the various states, ministries of education, or other agencies of government doing an amazing work in terms of regulating? Because we see a lot of mushroom schools all over the place, whether it's primary, secondary, university, or what have you. Maybe it's only colleges of education that have not been so privatized as it stands right now. How would you rate regulation on a scale of 10?
Well, when we talk about regulation is still all about government. Government puts their own people in charge of the regulatory agencies, and you discover that when you are head of a regulatory agency, you are answerable to government.
Right.
And most of the times, even when you actually want to wield the brake hammer and you actually wanted to do the right thing, a call from the top will definitely stop you from doing that. And that is why even at the level of regulatory, it has not actually been able to achieve the purpose it is supposed to have achieved. And most of these problems that we have, in Bauchi alone, we have over 100 private colleges of education in Bauchi State.
In Bauchi State alone. That's the states in northeast Nigeria.
Yes, in northeast, over 100 private colleges of education, and they are illegal institutions. And they are running. And you imagine that, we have National Commission for Colleges of Education, the regulatory agency.
Right.
And you discover that in spite of this, the regulatory agency will be able to perform its function when it is well funded. So when you do not fund the agency to the capacity to which it can function, then it will not be able to carry out that function. You are talking about an agency that will have to oversee all colleges of education in Nigeria, in all states, in all local government, and the budgetary provision for that particular agency is incapable of doing that. That means deliberately, government will make sure that those agencies are not able to perform their function to the extent that they will not be able to regulate that. At the level of the primary and secondary school, that is left for the state government and local government to actually carry out, especially at the state level of the state government. But most of the quality assurance agencies in some of these states are not performing that task because some of these things have been politicized. And if a legislator or a commissioner establish, an institution, and somebody that was employed by the same government is going there to close it down, a call from a higher quarter will definitely make them to stop. And that is why because we do not have strong institutions in Nigeria. Our institutions are highly politicized, therefore to carry out even the statutory functions becomes very difficult. And that is why we have the problem we have today.
In recent times, there have been calls that politically exposed people, whether they're elected or appointed, should not be allowed, just like their family members, whether their spouses or their children or their parents, to travel abroad to acquire education. So they must all stay at home to access education in Nigeria. To what extent will that solve the problem in the education sector?
I believe that it will be, while we are trying to solve a problem, we are also creating another problem. Because what I mean by that is that we are creating a problem, that we also, making us to be infringing on the fundamental human rights of those people.
Right.
Because it's like you have created a kind of a limitation. You have restricted them, from being able to do that. We have even children of politicians that can genuinely get scholarship to study abroad. As a result of that particular student's, capacity, to pass, the requisite examination. It will be against the right of that child. After all, we have the Child Right Act,
Right.
You know, that we cannot also go and say we are going against it. For that child, oh, you cannot travel abroad because your father is a minister or your father is a House of Assembly member. I don't think that is not the solution. But when people come up, you know, with that, they are just trying to say that the education you are giving us, let your child also experience it, which is also okay. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. Even in Nigeria here, we have institutions, you know, that no child of a civil servant can attend because of the high cost of going, you know, paying the tuition and even the cost of living in those institutions. That even in Nigeria here, they can't afford it. We have institutions where they pay up to 10 million. We have those that pay in dollars until government, you know, stopped that in recent times. And that is like being abroad in Nigeria, because the environment under which they learn and everything is not Nigeria, it's outside this country. Because when you enter there, you know that these people are not in Nigeria. And only the children of politicians and some of these people can attend those institutions. So it goes beyond that. If we want to solve the problem, it is for us to look at where have we gone it wrong. For instance, you cannot have a strong education when you do not have a strong teacher training institutions. Because that is where it begins. When we had the first, you know, formal school in Nigeria in 1842, in Badagry, where the first school, you know, was established, the focus at that time was how to produce individuals that, you know, were functional, be able to make the society, you know, work for the society and get, you know, productive life for the society. And emphasis went to the level of which we can get the right teachers to teach them. And that was why the first teacher institution that came up in Abeokuta continued to, you know, produce teachers at that time till we get to St. Andrew's College in Oyo. That is the first formal teacher training institution that we had that actually showed out the best of teachers in Nigeria today. And if we are talking about that, let's look back. Where are the types of Basfafuwa who were produced by the best teacher training institution at that time? Now we don't have those institutions anymore. Colleges of education are not well funded. Faculty of education universities are not well funded. The universities are not well funded. Therefore, you do not even have people who are proud to be teachers anymore. So you do not have people who actually want to go into education. The last report of JAM about subscription to programs in Nigerian universities revealed that the least subscribed course is education. Whether at the university.
Why is that? It's not a professional course.
Yeah, because nobody wants to go there. And have you checked that how many private universities are run courses in education? Go and check. They don't. Because they don't have to produce teachers. Because you produce a teacher who graduates and you send to private school to go and teach, and they pay the teacher 30,000 after the student might have passed through private university and pay like 10 million, 15 million. So they are not ready. They are not even running education courses because education to them is not profitable. Education to them will not even make their students and their children, you know, to get to where they are going. I challenge Nigerian politicians. Come out and tell me, any one of you, how many of you do have your children in faculty of education?
In private universities?
In Nigerian universities, even in the normal university. Who their children are running education courses? Who their governors whose children are running education courses? They don't. They go for other professional courses. Education courses are left to the downtrodden. They are left to the children, you know, or the masses. And that is why, even when they are looking at what they want to do to education, teacher education is not even considered. Because it is not their area at all. And that is why we keep telling them that you cannot run a country and have a country that will be successful without a strong teacher education. And when we talk about teacher education, we talk about teacher institutions. When we talk about teacher institutions, we talk about colleges of education. How much emphasis, you know, has government placed on colleges of education? That is an institution. I will tell you this. Nigeria, as of today, we need about 378 classrooms to be able to meet up with the demands of students out of school. 378 classrooms. We need 278 teachers to man those classrooms.
In one school?
278,000, sorry, 278,000.
Okay, across the country.
Across the country to man those institutions. And when we are talking of out of school children, we are talking mainly about primary schools. Primary schools. And which institution is directly linked to primary school? College of Education. Now, ask government, what type of intervention has government done? In 2017, it will interest you to know that government did what they call need assessment in colleges of education, 64 colleges of education in Nigeria. And government in its report recommended that 364 billion will be needed to rejuvenate, to make college of education to meet up with global standard, best standard. Since that 2017, government released only 15 billion in 2023. Only 15 billion in 2023. And if we are talking about 2017, 364 billion, we are talking about 2023, 15 billion. When you look at the exchange rate, you look at the devaluation of the currency, you discover that what government actually released out of that 366 billion of 2017 is not up to 1 billion.
With inflation considered?
With inflation. And that is what was given to college of education. And you are talking about out of school children, 18 million. You are talking about banditry. You are talking about kidnapping, terrorism. And you know that the only number one solution to all this is education. Go and profile all those that have been arrested, all those kidnappers, terrorists that have been arrested. How many of them have even any level of education? They are stark illiterates. They are children that have been thrown into the street over the years. And yet, we are not doing much to arrest this. Therefore, government, effort to arrest this must not just be at the level of going to the bush to shoot or to do all those things. Those things will continue to escalate the crisis as we have. Education is the first thing government should do, and priority should be given to teacher education, to colleges of education, to be able to have more of these people brought in, into our system. When we talk about teachers, as a graduate, you cannot teach in primary school. Sir, as you are, you can't teach in primary school. No matter how well educated you are. You must be specially trained to be able to teach at the crèche level, at the level of nursery, and the level of primary school. If I was not trained in that way, so I can't teach them, despite the fact that I'm in education. Because some people were specially trained to be able to handle children at that level. And those are the people we produce at the level of colleges of education. And if government, now we have all manner of people who do not have job and they wanted to be doing something, they threw them into the classroom to be teaching. And the UNESCO recorded that we have more than the quack we have in the classroom, they are more than the qualified ones. And that is even the danger. If so, when I was talking about 288,000 teachers, I'm not even talking about the quacks. So if we remove the quacks, we were talking about 500,000 teachers needed. Because we have a population that is humongous with us.
And it's growing.
Actually want to address. And that is why investment in education is not the way government is treating it. You want to solve problems, face education. And when you face education, you face teacher education, in 2 years, government will have solved some of these problems and will be able to have a better Nigeria.
I cycle back again to funding. I mean, just this last weekend, you had an event where you had the Executive Secretary of TED Fund, architect Sonny Echano, who was also awarded and, of course, honored, inducted at that event. And I noticed that comments were poured on him extensively for the leadership he has provided for TED Fund and all of that, and the impact TED Fund is having across education, institutions in this country. If we removed TED Fund from the equation, how bad will it be for, because you go to schools, you see from the lecture theaters to what else, to the administrative buildings, to institutional vehicles, TED Fund all over the place. So if we remove TED Fund from the mix, how bad will it look?
Yeah, I will address that. But I want to also, our award to Architect Echano, it's not out of sentiment. we are a union of academic staff.
Right.
And our choice of him to, actually give him that award, is as a result of his special concern for teacher education.
Not just because he listed fund.
Yes. So it's a list, yeah. So he actually took interest. Wherever we, met with him and we informed him about this problem concerning teacher education, he took interest. And he provided, all that, were needed. For instance, teacher practice was not well funded. 8 million will be given to an institution to go and run teaching practice. In a year, 8 million. And we went to him that teaching practice is the equivalent of teaching hospital to medical students.
Like where you have housemanship.
Sorry, to medical students. Therefore, if you are talking about teaching practice, you should put, it in the same mold as the housemanship they do or internship for engineering and that. And he asks, how much will be needed? And we came up with 140 million that will be needed for each institution to actually be able to run teaching practice. And he approved that. And he made it available to institutions. And there were some other, even we have a special school in Nigeria. That is the school. It is only College of Education in Nigeria that is running special school in the area of physical, those that are challenged. Special.
People living with disabilities.
Yes. And that is Federal College of Education or your. We told him this school should be specially funded. That is the only one, even they say in the whole of tropical Africa, that we have. And he listened and he made, fund available to actually make that institution to be functional. So when we look at his, his disposition to teacher education, we consider him worthy of that award. Now, the area of TED Fund has become the official sponsors of tertiary institutions in Nigeria.
Is that a good thing?
That is a bad omen. A bad omen because TED Fund is supposed to be an intervention agency.
Maybe complementary role?
Just a complementary role. But you discover that government has made TED Fund to be the financier of Nigeria, as far as the proprietors of Nigerian, tertiary institutions. Because governors deliberately established universities for the purpose of making TED Fund to fund them. Not because they are actually interested in funding the institutions. And you will see them establishing institutions just for TED Fund funding. And that is the problem we have. Because when you go to the budget of the federal government, capital budgetary provisions that are even in the budget lines are never implemented. Therefore, you cannot get to any institutions and say in 2021, where your capital vote, what did you use for? Where is the building? It's not in existence. Start from 10 years, you will see one. As we speak, the 2023 budget provision for college education to make provision for hostels, I still went to the ministry to ask them, what have you done to this money? The money is not released. So even when we talk about 7% allocation, what is the performance of that 7%?
So in fund analysis, it's even less than 7%.
3% most of the times. The only thing that they make available, they are the recurrent expedition, just the personnel cost. But when it comes to capital votes, it's not in existence. So it's TED Fund that is doing it. And that is why even when it comes to loan, student loan, they recourse to TED Fund to go and fund it. Because they have given everything to TED Fund to carry. And that is why government is not even seeing anything that is necessary for them to do to make education functional. And to us, we know that if we continue to go this way, a time will come that there will be a total collapse of public institutions. It's unfortunate that we sent people abroad to go and study. And when they get into institutions abroad, they were trained using the best of facilities and equipment. They return to Nigeria. They cannot make, because those equipment are not available in Nigeria. So even all the knowledge they had gone to acquire becomes meaningless only at the theoretical level. At the level of the practical level, the hands-on, they don't even have the facility to make use of them. Because our institutions, they are not comparable to any institutions. In those days, people would come from Europe, people would come from all over Africa to study in University of Ibadan, University of Nigeria, University of Benin. You see foreign students, they have foreign students hostels. But today, it is not longer like that. Because how many foreign students can survive in our institutions where there will not be electricity, where there will not be water, where the facilities, they are not available. And that is why today we have these problems that we are not even anywhere in the world, even when it comes to global rating of institutions. Covenant University, a private university, has many times overtaken University of Ibadan in terms of global rating because of the deliberate attempt of the proprietor to fund Covenant University and make it to compete, globally. But where are our ABU? Where do we have? Where is our UNN? Where is our UNIBED? Where is our University of Ibadan? Where is our University of Lagos? Because government is not interested.
All right.